Hi, my name is Sheik, and this is my ultimate Cloak and Dagger guide. I hit Eternity in Season 0, and I'm currently Celestial 2 on multiple accounts in Season 1. This guide will give you all the best tips and tricks to bump up your healing numbers, increase your game impact, and instantly raise your rank. Whether you're just getting started with Cloak and Dagger or you're a more advanced player, we're going to cover everything you'll ever need to know to play them at a high level. Cloak and Dagger is a great pick to carry your games with insane healing and the option to get picks with their high damage output and playmaking ultimate. First, let's go through Dagger's abilities. Lightforce Dagger is her left-click primary fire. She shoots daggers that damage enemies and heal allies. The daggers create an AoE healing field on impact, whether the dagger hits an enemy or an ally. The initial hit heals for 10 health per hit, and the AoE effect heals for 18, meaning you restore 28 health to an ally when you heal them. The AoE heal will also heal yourself, which is very useful to keep in mind. Stay close to your allies when you're taking damage. It's a great way to heal yourself without needing to drop your Dagger Storm, which is her healing bubble. The daggers also deal 15 damage per hit on an enemy. The AoE healing effect will still be triggered, meaning you can hit an enemy and heal all your allies around them for 18 health. This is very useful when needing to whittle down enemies but also needing to keep your allies up at the same time. The daggers automatically attract to targets closer to your crosshairs, creating an auto-aim effect, meaning that you don't have to worry about having perfect aim. The daggers will also bounce off surfaces while maintaining the attraction effect, meaning that you can try to ricochet her heals off walls to hit allies and around corners. This means that Dagger can position herself more safely around walls and corners to avoid getting picked off by a Hawkeye, for example. Her auto-aim has a decently long range, but if your allies are too far away, you'll need to be extra precise with your shots. There is also no auto-aim towards allies that are full health. However, there is still an AoE heal generated if you hit them directly with your daggers, meaning you can heal yourself by pelting daggers off of your full health teammates. And the final point to note about her daggers is that you can actually reload faster by switching form to Cloak and then switching back. Dagger Storm is her right-click ability. She creates an AoE healing bubble which heals for 55 per second for 6 seconds, totaling 330 health, and the cooldown is 12 seconds. The field attaches to surfaces, so you can shoot it at the floor or walls, and it has a very far range to throw it. Keep this in mind when you're returning to a fight and trying to heal allies that are very far away, and when the auto-aim effect on your daggers isn't proccing. Her bubble is very useful for healing yourself. It's the only way Dagger can heal herself without an ally near her. I'd like to use this ability in combination with her veil, which we'll go over later. The best use for her bubble is to use it when multiple allies are grouped up and they're losing health. It's very useful when lots of your team are taking a lot of damage. You can also throw your bubble to an ally that isn't grouped with your team and then return to healing your main group of allies. It's a good way to apply healing to more of your team. Veil of Lightforce is her E ability. She shoots forward a rectangular veil that heals allies for 45 upon touching them and gives them a 15% healing boost for 4 seconds. The cooldown is 12 seconds. This ability is the most important ability for Dagger. It's imperative that you hit this, especially when trying to keep your tanks alive. Dagger's base heals may feel like you're tickling your tanks and it takes forever to heal them. But be careful when casting this ability, as allies can move out of it pretty easily since its speed isn't the fastest. Try to be close to your ally when casting so it's more likely to hit. The best time to use her veil is when your tanks have lost a bit of health or they're going to take a lot of damage soon, like enemies popping ultimates. Don't pop it when your tanks are full health, as there's not much fighting going on, so you're unlikely to get a lot of value out of it. The healing boost is a great tool in keeping your allies alive and restoring them to full health quickly. The healing boost will also allow your other strategists to pump more heals into them. Just be wary of the long cooldown. 12 seconds can be a lengthy time to wait. Dagger's heals will not be as potent in this time, so it's important to get the most value out of the veil and save it for the high damage situations. You can also hit multiple allies with the veil, so try your best to line it up well. If you need to restore health to your allies super quickly, hit them with the veil, the bubble, and start autoing. You can see how insane these heals are. And finally, her shift ability is called Shadow's Embrace. She can switch to Cloak. Let's go through his abilities. Cloak's primary fire is called Darkforce Cloak. It locks onto targets in his crosshair and does consistent damage. It deals 75 damage per second and doesn't require a reload since it doesn't have ammo. Cloak deals a lot of damage and it definitely should not be ignored. You should look to deal damage whenever you can. Some examples are when your allies are very healthy or an enemy is low health or by themselves, so they can be easily eliminated. Dark Teleportation is Cloak's right-click ability. He makes himself and nearby allies untargetable and invisible to enemies. The ability lasts for 2 seconds, and everyone inside of it also receives a movement speed boost. Now here comes the unfortunate news. Allies can't take any actions in the Shroud, otherwise they break the effect. These actions include casting abilities and shooting. The Shroud is amazing for dodging enemy ultimates, which can be extended to allies as long as they don't break the effect. Let's go over a bunch of ultimates that are useless against the Shroud. Magneto, Black Panther, Iron Man, Scarlet Witch, Jeff, Winter Soldier, Wolverine, Groot, Venom, Black Widow, Moon Knight, kinda, Psylocke, Spider-Man, and Thor. You can also use your Cloak to immune allies from the Doctor Strange ulti follow-up damage. Cloak can also use his ability to ascend to higher ground, which is handy when being knocked or thrown off the map by abilities such as Jeff Ultimate. Just hold the spacebar when casting this ability. You can also utilize the movement speed boost when walking out of base. Terror Cape is Cloak's E ability. It's the same as Dagger's Veil ability, except the effects are different. It applies blind and vulnerability to any enemy's hit, meaning they can't see beyond 10 meters for 1.5 seconds and take 20% increased damage for 3 seconds. And lastly, it deals 55 damage on hit. This ability is great to counter enemy ultimates. There's not much an ulting Star-Lord or Hawkeye can do while they're blinded. It's great to weave in this ability when you're in need of a reload on Dagger. As noted earlier, you can reload by swapping forms. It's the perfect chance to throw out his Terror Cape before swapping back to Dagger to continue healing. The blind is very effective in disrupting enemies, while the vulnerability also gives your teammates more kill potential on the targets. You can keep track of Cloak's cooldowns while you're playing Dagger in the bottom right corner of your screen, and vice versa. Before we talk about Cloak's ultimate, I want to share with you a secret tip to bless your games. Hitting the subscribe button on my channel actually makes the matchmaking system favour you. It's been proven and fact-checked. Just trust me. Eternal Bond is Cloak and Dagger's ultimate ability. They dash 4 times, which leaves a spell field on the floor that heals allies and damages enemies who stand on it. It deals 30 damage per second and 220 healing per second, but here's the amazing news. Cloak and Dagger can stack the dashes on top of one another, which can double, triple, or quadruple the values depending on how many dashes you stack together. The total amount of healing with 4 dashes stacked is 880 per second, which is the highest healing factor in the game, meaning you can even survive a Moon Knight ultimate. The field created by each dash lasts for 10 seconds. Their ultimate is definitely one of the strongest in the game for Season 1. It has such a low energy cost, so it will usually be the first ultimate to charge in a round. It's so important that you learn its strengths and weaknesses so that you can use it correctly and to its highest potential in your games. Cloak and Dagger ulti is the most versatile ultimate in the game. You can use it offensively to push objectives or engage in teamfights, or defensively to counter enemy ultimates with a focus on healing your allies. Let's go over how to use the ultimate offensively first. When to decide to ult offensively. Number 1. When you are running a 3 healer composition, which is very popular in Season 1. You need to look at how many defensive ultimates you have on your team. For example, if you're running Cloak and Dagger, Lunar Snow, and Invisible Woman, you have 2 defensive ultimates, meaning that you're able to use C and D ult offensively. Your healers should automatically know to hold their ultimates to counter enemy ultimates, whereas you should be using C and D ulti to push objectives, zone enemies, and picking up kills. You might want to communicate with your other healers and tell them just in case. The reason for this is because Cloak ult does damage and the Lunar Snow ults and Invisible Woman ults only heal, so it's best to take advantage of the damage as well. Number 2, you've charged your ultimate very fast at the start of a game. You can throw out your ultimate instantly and try to pick off a few enemies before the enemy has ultimates to counter you. Keep an eye on the scoreboard to see how fast your allies are charging their ultimates to gauge whether you have charged yours super early or not. An example situation with juicy ultimate charge is when your team is running 2 tanks who are consistently taking damage that you've been permanently healing up. The fastest ultimates I have charged are around 30 to 35 seconds into a round, just as a benchmark time for you guys. Number 3, to force a healer ultimate. You may want to do this so that your DPS or tanks have a bigger chance of picking up kills with their ultimates. Number 4, to push an objective. Cloak's ultimate is amazing for this purpose. They provide a free healing path for your allies to walk onto the objective. It's very hard to kill players through Cloak ultimate since the healing factor of 220 per second is very high. which is multiplied when you layer the dashes on top of each other. It provides great zone control. You can cover the entire capture point with their ultimate, and the 4 dashes cover a considerable distance, which can push enemies very far back, especially the healers. And finally, number 5, for engaging in a fight. You might find yourself in a stale team fight where both teams are trading similar damage and there is no scope to get a pick. You could throw out your ultimate to force your allies to aggress and ramp up the tempo. Try your best to get a pick on a backline DPS or apply pressure to the healers, then use your immune ability to get out at the end of your ultimate. Now let's talk about how to use Cloak and Dagger ulti. You want to start your ultimate from behind your allies so that they get covered by the first dash. Remember that once you cast your ultimate, you have stopped throwing out healing to your allies, and it might take them a hot second before they move into your ult. After you're done dashing, you want to swap to Cloak. Throw out your blind to try to get a pick on a squishy target, or simply apply pressure to their healers so they can't heal the rest of the team. Make sure you have a rough idea of when your ultimate is going to end so you can use your Cloak immune to return to safety. You have 10 seconds before the final dash aura disappears after you finish dashing. A common question is, how do you know when to layer their ultimate? I layer my ultimate if I hear enemy ultimates being popped and I need to provide more healing for my team. It's also good to layer your ult backwards at the end of the cast so that you're not too far away from your team and you can survive after your ulti ends. You can also layer your ultimate on the capture point to force enemies to walk off of it, as there is a higher chance they can soak the damage from a singular dash. If your objective is to stall the point for extra capture progress or in overtime, you can layer multiple dashes together, which will literally make you invincible. Now let's talk about using their ult as a defensive ultimate. When you draft your team comp, make sure you check how many defensive ultimates you have. For example, if you only have a Rocket Raccoon, this tells you that you need to be saving your ultimate as a defensive counter to enemy ultimates. To ult defensively, you want to make sure that your lower health allies are able to get inside your healing carpet, cover as much of the floor as you can, making sure you're healing as many teammates as possible. You can also layer your ultimate depending on how much damage you're trying to soak. Just remember one thing, don't go dashing off into the enemy backline. Make sure you're keeping your teammates alive, especially if you're the only main healer. The only problem with Cloak ulti when ulting defensively is that the area of effect isn't as big as other healers when you initially cast it, such as Luna, Mantis and Invisible Woman. So cast your ultimate on your allies with your first dash and quickly spread your heals on the floor to make up for it. Psylocke and Star-Lord are pretty good examples of ultis that other strategists are better at countering, since C&D ultimate doesn't instantly cover a huge area. Don't ult when your teammates are super far away, make sure they actually have a chance to get into your ultimate. Some examples of dangerous ultimates you should look to ult are Star-Lord, Hela and Winter Soldier, and you can even cast your ultimate when Groot ults you and it will heal your allies. But be careful when dropping your ult defensively, as you can be stunned or killed out of it in the first second that you cast. Doctor Strange ulti is a huge example, so make sure to prime your ultimate extra early if you're dropping it for him. The more dangerous the enemy ultimates, the more important it is for you to use your ultimate defensively. A further point for defensive cloak ults is countering the enemy cloak ult. Since cloak ultis are going to be the first available in the fight, the enemy cloak might throw out their ultimate first. Now what should you do? First, you should assess whether your team is taking a lot of damage and how much value the cloak is getting. You could then choose to ult on top of the enemy cloak's ultimate to counteract the effects and save your teammates. You should try to wait a few seconds before dropping your ultimate, as this will ensure that your ulti lasts longer than the enemy cloak ulti, giving you more opportunity to turn the fight in your favour at the end. Now, what should you watch out for when you're using your ultimate? Whether you're ulting aggressively or defensively, there are instances of damage that you should be watching out for, so let's go over every way that you can die in your ultimate. Iron Man ultimate. You're cooked. You can try and dash away from his ultimate, but if he's close enough, you have little chance of surviving, since he can change the direction of his ultimate right up until it's fired. If Iron Man tries to ult when you finish dashing, you can quickly swap to your cloak immune and attempt to dodge it. Scarlet Witch ulti. Try your best to go around a corner or break line of sight and pray. The center of Namor ultimate will always one-shot you. Hawkeye can headshot you in your ultimate. He'll usually try to line up a headshot when you stand still at the end of each dash. You can try to counteract his headshots by turning your model around while you're waiting to do your next dash, as it's harder to headshot from the back. You should also consider a final dash to break line of sight or return to the back of your team to make sure that you're safe. The similar approach can be applied to a damage boosted Black Widow. And finally, Magneto ulti has become the most popular way to shut down Cloak ultimate. Let's go over some tips on how to combat this. Be ready to dash around corners, walls, or inside buildings when you hear the Magneto ult voice line. The chances are you can make him get very little value and waste his ultimate. You can also use your cloak immune to fly as high as you can and then cast your ultimate while you're in the air. You'll slowly descend as you dash, but being high in the air will hopefully make it harder for Magneto to hit you with his ultimate. He'll have to waste time trying to find you in the air, and there's no floor for him to hit. It has to be a direct hit, meaning he has to be more accurate. Cloak and Dagger also have a team-up ability called From Shadow to Light with Moon Knight. Moon Knight can create an invisibility field for himself which lasts for a few seconds. The invisibility is very useful for Moon Knight to try and get picks on enemies and increase his survivability. This team-up isn't a necessity, it doesn't have a huge impact, but it is a nice little buff for Moon Knight. Moon Knight has seen an increased pick rate ever since the triple support comp started becoming popular. He has a very reliable way of killing strategists through their ultimates with his ultimate. He can get picks on enemies while ignoring the triple sustain because of his high DPS and one-shot ultimate. Cloak and Dagger doesn't receive a special effects from this team up, so instead they receive a 15% healing boost for the season, similar to other anchor characters. Here are some other quick-fire helpful C&D tips. Dagger is really bad at destroying Moon Knight Arcs, Namor Squids, Loki clones, and other deployables, so swap to Cloak to destroy them quicker or weave in Dagger's melee attack for extra burst damage where necessary. Speaking of melee attacks, did you know Cloak melees a lot faster than Dagger? This is something that comes in handy when killing tanks who are holding their shields up or other enemies that come too close. Dagger can utilize Namor Squids and Loki clones to proc her AoE healing. This is useful when needing to heal yourself. Cloak can use his immune to fly back onto the map, the perfect counter to Jeff ulti. The hitbox in Cloak and Dagger's ultimate depends on who you casted the ult with. If you ulted as Dagger, then you can only hit Dagger's model in the ulti, and vice versa. Now let's go over how to deal with being dove or 1v1 situations. The first way to deal with this is you can drop your bubble on yourself and tickle the enemy with your healing daggers. If the enemy is close enough, you'll be healing yourself while also whittling down your enemy's health. With the two sources of healing on yourself, you'll be surprised how much of a 1v1 demon Dagger can be. The other option is to drop your bubble, swap to Cloak, throw out your E to blind them, which also increases the damage they take, and then start sucking on them until they're finished. Wait. Cloak and Dagger has a very strong place in the meta, which has been cemented with her Season 1 changes. She was very strong in Season 0, but was kinda slept on in my opinion. The amount of healing she pumped out was very similar, but I guess the buffs to her made players pay more attention to her. I would rank her as an S tier pick right now. She's a pick or ban character, her healing output rivals Luna Snow. She is likely to heal more than Luna in most games, since Luna requires aim and there's more room for error with her. Dagger heals are a lot more reliable, especially at lower elo. However, Luna's ultimate will still hold the prime slot for strategists since it has a bigger range and healing factor on instant cast than C&D ulti. The additional dash to C&D's ultimate makes them even more oppressive and is the only ultimate that can out-heal Moon Knight ultimate. Cloak and Dagger is a great pick to carry your games with insane healing and the option to get picks with their high damage output and playmaking ultimate. As we're reaching the end of the video, let me summarize my top tips for playing Cloak and Dagger. Number 1. Cooldown management. Make sure you get value from Dagger's bubble and veil and weave in Cloak's blind. Number 2. Don't stop firing your daggers. Even if you think they're not going to hit, try to make use of the ricochet effect with walls and other surfaces. Number 3. Be aware of threats when you ult. The big one right now is Magneto. Remember the counters we spoke about earlier, or get the Magneto on your team to bubble you while you ult. Number 4. Defensive or offensive ultimate. This is probably my biggest tip. Assess your team comp. How many other defensive ultimates do you have? Don't go dashing into their backline only to get wiped by an enemy DPS ulti after your ult expires. If you're the only defensive ult on your team, don't go in and use it aggressively. Thank you so much for watching my Cloak and Dagger guide. Please subscribe, drop a like and a comment to help my channel grow. There will be lots more videos just like this one to come. Let me know what you think in the comments and leave any questions you may have there. I stream on Twitch frequently, so go check me out over there and drop a follow. I'll see you guys next time.